We continue with our fifth and final video on serpents of salvation. Kind of an interesting topic. Serpents of salvation. All that simply means is out of evil, which is represented by the snake. Out of evil comes good. Salvation is certainly good because no matter what kind of life we have here on earth, we transition, we die, we move on physically. And our hope is that there is salvation in the Lord, or eternal life in the Lord. And we believe that because Jesus said it, for one thing, and we believe him. We take him at his word. He said, if I am lifted up, the Son of Man must be lifted up, That means that we have a choice to do so, but unless we do, and then he followed that with, so the first requirement was must be lifted up. How do we lift him up? In prayer, we lift him up. In meditation, we lift him up. In service, we must do it, though. It's not optional. And then he said, number two, must be lifted up. And he said, then we must, and then he says, everyone who believes, which means the second must is that we must believe. That means moving more beyond simple faith. I call it trust, really. A lot of people like to say faith, but faith without trust is not faith at all. Trust is letting go. I can have faith in you that you're going to do something, and I can believe that you're going to do it, but once you do it, once you accomplish it, then I trust that you will do it, and trust to me is much more powerful. So the two requirements was, first, Jesus must be lifted up, he said, and then you must believe. Those who believe. And then, as a result of that, he said, eternal life. And he made it very clear. Eternal life. He said, eternal life. So if we lift him up, lift Jesus up, he said, I, the Son of Man, Son of God, must be lifted up, just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness. You know the story. I've told it now several times of Moses being faced with the unbelief, lack of faith of the Israelites who found themselves in the wilderness without food, without a shelter God had provided for them. And the minute they found themselves hungry and cold and struggling, they turned away from God. And then, of course, God punished them by sending snakes to bite them. Again, that's symbolic of evil. And then, of course, they asked Moses to pray to God, and he did pray to God, and God told him to take that same representation of evil, the snake, make a bronze snake, put it on a pole, and everyone who looked upon it would live. So Jesus is again coming here saying, using the same concept, just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, he says, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, that everyone, and that's anyone, Jew and Gentile, who believes in him, who has faith in him, who trusts in him, may have eternal life in him. That may have eternal life, which gives rise to something, a third requirement. First, must be lifted up. Second, must believe in him. Then he said, may have eternal life in him. Why is it may have eternal life? Because that means that we have to live our life serving others. So this is a clear formula. It's a formula that, lift God up, That's the formula. Believe in him. That's the formula. And then serve others. So that's sort of a formula for, and we can extend our thing here to eternal life. Let's look at another way, and as we move our board over here to a drawing. Let's take these off. We don't want these on there. Let's move it over and take a look at this another way as we prepare for Lent, the Lenten season. And Lent is just where we share in the sacrifice that Jesus made for us. The Lenten season, which is 40 days, the Lenten season. We're going to look at it, 40 days, 40 days. Let's go back to our chart up here. And as we look at those 40 days, and this is what's symbolic of here, we look at those 40 days, and let's look, come back here and get our pen working again with this last one. Okay, now we're right. We get rid of the lines. Okay, and here we are. Now we get what we want to say here. This is symbolic. This is symbolic of the Easter season, and of course, you will see all around the city the purple representing the passion of Christ, or Jesus actually. And then the cross, obviously, the cross is representing Calvary. And then, of course, the lilies here are representing the spring or resurrection. And you're going to see that. You're going to see that throughout the Easter season. But let's get up here and take a look at what the problem is. And we, at this particular point in this last video, it should be pretty clear. The problem is we don't see the good in evil. We've told you that. And as a result, we don't know God's plan. And because we can't see the good and evil, we don't understand what God is doing. And oftentimes we're faced with a lot of challenges in our life, and we have no idea. We have no idea. We may have a vague concept based on our prayer life. So the Lenten season, Lent, is a time that many of us do not understand or practice because we don't give up anything. I mean, we don't share in the passion of Christ. We don't give up anything. It's a vague concept to us. But this is a very important concept because once we share with Jesus in his passion, we begin to identify with him, and through our identification with him, it can strengthen our prayers, strengthen our meditation, and it allow us to practice it on a regular basis. And this, of course, is what we need to do, not just during the Easter season or the Lenten season, but every day of our life. We should have a consistent prayer life. We should meditate on a regular basis. That means every day. And we should practice service. Again, it comes back to those three things: prayer, meditation, and service to others. This allows us, as we look back at the opportunity for our salvation, as we look back to our salvation, this allows us to move beyond the Garden of Eden, move beyond the snake in the Garden of Eden, move beyond the serpent in the Garden of Eden, move beyond to the physical life even. This is death. All of us, as I've talked about it on our horizontal and vertical axis. The horizontal axis, this is the horizontal axis. The horizontal axis is going to lead to death, from birth to death, and there's no way around it. It is only when there's an intersection, a vertical axis coming into play, that allows us to ascend to God. Only when we, that's the only time that we can move beyond the verdict which was pronounced upon us when we took of the tree of good and evil, the tree of life in the garden, when we were disobedient to God. And that's the key, being disobedient to God. Now, once we move beyond the Garden of Eden, we can experience peace, because we want peace in our life. We want tranquility. We want serenity. We want not to have to worry or fear death, or fear that the end is going to eventually come upon us. And then we can become who God intended us to be. I call this the solution. This is the solution. This is the solution to our challenge. And the most important thing about this particular message is that we have saw how snakes historically, serpents, have been used to move us to salvation. And now we see how that same process of Eve being convinced by the snake in the garden to do wrong, and we now can see how that same snake was lifted up by Moses in the wilderness to save the Israelites' life, and we can see how Jesus Christ, if we lift him up in our life, we can move from evil to good. We can move from sin and death to salvation. Serpents of salvation. We hope you enjoyed the message. Don't forget, you can send in your questions at the bottom of this video, or make certain comments, and I'd be glad to hear them. We're moving into our next message as we continue in this Easter season to the mystification of bereavement. The mystification of bereavement. That's our next subject, as we're going to talk about the mystery of death, and how through death, bereavement, we receive, as all living things do, eternal life. We hope you'll join us.